Now, today we're going to make a chocolate birthday cake. This is the favourite cake at my house, and I've made it so many times. I'm sure I could do it blindfolded, but I'm not going to do it blindfolded today. It's the usual base of the cake is the usual Victoria sponge, and this cake comes in two phases. We bake the Victoria sponge, and then when that has come out of the oven and cooled down, then we make the icing. There's two types of icing. There's the soft butter icing in the middle, and then the crackly chocolate icing on the outside. But first of all, we have to make the base. And the usual is margarine, sugar, and self-raising flour and eggs. That's the basic ingredients for this. For this, we need two round tins like this. These tins are 8 inches or 20 centimeters in diameter. If you use that size tin, then this is the correct mix. 8 ounces of sugar, flour, and margarine. 235 grams of each of those ingredients, and 4 eggs. If you have a smaller tins, use the smaller mix, the 6 ounces, 175 grams of the 3 ingredients and 3 eggs, because the rising agent will fail if you put too small a mix into a big tin or too big a mix into the small tin. So we start. I've already measured out 235 grams of margarine and sugar. So I'm going to cream those two together now. This is a regular Victoria sponge, and you'll use this mix quite often if you're starting baking. You'll use this mix more often than any other probably. So we start with this. It's a very good idea to have the margarine and the eggs out of the fridge. If you know you're going to be baking the following day, take them out of the fridge the night before, and they all come up to temperature, and you get a better result if you have them out of the fridge overnight. I'm just creaming the margarine and sugar together now. That means you're trying to get the sugar into every aspect of the margarine, and the margarine into every aspect of the sugar, so you're trying to get a good spread on it. And it's helpful if you use the full round of the bowl to get that. That's the next thing you do is you put in the wet ingredients, and 4 eggs usually for this. Have them ready to go. Because you don't want to be sifting shell out of the mix, so have them ready to go. I have them already broken in the jug. So you make sure the eggs are broken and that they are well mixed into the already creamed mixture. I already have the oven switched on, and it's switched on to 170 degrees, and we'll be putting the mix into the oven in a few minutes. It's important to have the oven ready when the mix is ready, because the rising agent is already operating. Once you get it into the mix, the rising agent starts to activate as soon as it hits the wet ingredients. Now, I've already measured out the flour, 235 grams, and we measure out 2 tablespoons of cocoa powder. That's the flavouring for a chocolate cake. And we sift the flour and the cocoa powder into the mix. And again, always when you're sifting, you sift above the bowl as high as you get away with, really, to try and get as much air as possible into the mix. That's always the aim when you're baking cakes or baking anything. You do this as gently as you can, because as you say, you always try to keep the air. You don't beat the air out of the mix you're already got it into. So you do this gently, and again use the full circle of the bowl to get the ingredients together. With cocoa powder, it's always very dry, so you always think, oh, this is never going to come together, and then suddenly it just seems to come to the right consistency, and you can see the mixture getting light, because the rising agent is already beginning to work in the mix. Sometimes if it's very dry, you might add a splash of milk to the mix, but for the moment I think we're doing fine with the present mix. I won't put milk into it this time. But just a splash of milk to help the eggs to moisten the cocoa powder. Now what we do is we divide the mix evenly between the two tins, which I've already lined with parchment paper, and we just divide them as evenly as we can. Yeah, it's not an absolute exact science, but you try and do the best you can. Spread them out. The heat of the oven will, of course, spread them out and even them out for you, but we put those straight into the oven. You put those into the oven for 35 minutes, and again, don't be tempted to open the door while the cake is cooking, because the cold air going in interferes with the rising agent. So leave it intact for 35 minutes. Try to be patient. I put it in the oven at a middle to high shelf, just higher than the middle shelf, and they both go onto the same shelf. It's time to take them out of the oven. 35 minutes have gone by. So we can lift these out of the tins for a moment, let them cool down a little bit before we actually remove the paper. Let them cool down a little bit because they're still slightly unstable, and they just take a minute or two before we can remove them from the paper. And what we'll do is we'll turn them upside down and let them cool on a cooling tray, and let them cool them a bit quicker. Now we have to leave them cool down for about an hour before we can embark on the next phase, which is putting the soft butter icing in the middle and then covering it with cooking chocolate, which would be the icing on the cake. We're ready to make the middle icing for the cake. That's the soft butter icing. And the ingredients for the butter icing is butter, of course. Now I've put 4 ounces of butter. Again, if you can keep the butter out of the fridge overnight, then this job becomes an awful lot easier. Now, to the butter icing, we will add 4 ounces, that's 120 grams. We have 2 tablespoons of icing sugar, now not caster sugar, icing sugar. So 2 tablespoons of this, half a tablespoon of cocoa powder. Now, it's very easy to go overboard with the cocoa powder, but you can actually overdo it. So a half a teaspoon of cocoa powder. This has to be sifted into the butter because there's always lumps in the icing sugar and in the cocoa powder. So you sift that into the butter, and this is a very simple process. You just push that through the sieve, just simply cream it in with the butter that's already been soft from being overnight. So this is not a difficult baking operation. And again, with cocoa powder, it's so dry, you'd think this is never going to, look at it, as dry as a bone, and now when it comes together, you won't believe how it changes. And you see it coming together, so we try to get an even mix. Now the next thing is we try to say half on one and half on the other. So we'll start with the one. And bring the icing to the edge. Don't leave it all in the middle of the cake. Bring it around to the edge, because the middle tends to take care of itself. So that's one half done. Finish this off. Now we marry these two together, and there you have a perfect Victoria sponge. Now for the icing for the top of the cake, I use cooking chocolate. It melts very, very, very easily. Before I started, I put a pot of hot water, just simply I boiled the kettle, put hot water up about 2 centimeters at the bottom of the pot, and then I put this sort of heat-proof bowl on top with 1.5 sheets of chocolate. And without having the ring on or anything like that, the chocolate has melted. This device is called a bain-marie, basically a French term meaning Marie's bath. It comes from Marie Antoinette. So we have the marriage of the Victoria sponge, Queen Victoria and Marie Antoinette, 2 historical figures, to combine to make this cake. The cooking chocolate has already melted very, very easily. So when you're preparing your cooking chocolate for put into the bain-marie, you just break the chocolate into squares, and that accommodates the melting process. So you don't need a great deal of heat to melt it and to make it into the icing that you want. So now we come to the chocolate icing, and this is not too hot so I can touch it. Let's be careful with this. And you just simply pour the chocolate onto the cake. Look at that. Before I did this, I did put some parchment paper under. Some of these are forming into little pools, and you use that to try and come up, and that's why the parchment paper is on the ground. Now, for this job, you're not looking for perfection. You're looking for, if you cover 90% of the cake, you are doing very, very well, and it will look the part. You can direct the chocolate from the top into the areas that you feel are getting a little bit neglected on the side. But you're not to be worried too much about it. If you get about 80% of the sides done, you're doing better than most. You won't believe how this will look when it has solidified. Poems have been made of cakes like that.